and it was continued. Well, here's some examples of what he said. And they are so on point about this. They say no to so many ideas. They want to do a few ideas really well. And this is continued today by these words that are spoken by Tim Cook, who likewise is maintaining the culture that was set for Apple a long time ago. And by setting that culture, look how the success continues. So let's look at a few examples of what happens when it goes wrong. And then we'll come back to what we want to do to make it, to have a healthy, ethical culture. Jute, am I speaking clearly? Is it my voice coming across okay?
It's fine. You sound clear, crystal clear here.
Okay, very good, very good. So, how many of you have heard of Wells Fargo Bank, who wrote, you'll see here, this glowing dossier, and it's all published on the internet, you can find this there, about what their ethics were and their values were for their company. This is them saying, this is who we are. They went into more detail here, saying, we should always ask if this credit decision is right for the customer and for Wells Fargo. We never want to sacrifice credit quality for short-term financial gain. What did they do? Basically, they, through corruption and bribery, they committed a lot of offenses against customers by opening fake bank accounts. They were caught. It went on for years, but they were caught. They were fined $3 billion. And the CEO, John Stumpf, who wrote that document I showed you, and then presided over an organization which violated their own ethical values, was also fined $17.5 million from his personal fortune. And the bank's brand is tarnished, and they are still suffering. So here's my point, everybody. You might think you can get away with this and make some more money in the short term, but in the long term, you will get caught. It will be embarrassing, and you will only end up having to pay more than whatever you thought you would gain by breaking the ethics and cutting corners. Another example, Boeing and their safety issue with the 737 MAX. This is what Boeing's values said. And I want you to draw your attention particularly to number 3. We value human life, etc., etc. When it comes to safety, there are no competing priorities. Well, clearly, the CEO and the leadership and many people in the Boeing organization stomped all over their own values, and they did. When it comes to safety, there are no competing priorities. No, they lied. Competing priorities were profits. Right. And so they cut corners, they made a dangerous aircraft, people died. I think this is very serious. And I think if the leadership had led by these beautiful values, these read great, but so many companies write glowing values, glowing ethical standards, and then they do not keep to their own standards. I find this absolutely annoying, and I write a lot about it on my blog, guys, on Culture Czars. You can find a lot of these stories, and here is what ended up with Boeing. Big fines again, an embarrassed CEO, you get the picture. Let's have a story closer to home. I wonder how many of you know which company this is. This is the values as stated by an Indonesian company, a big, well-known Indonesian company. And they say things like honest, sincere, and open. Discipline, right? Who is it? It is Garuda, Indonesia. And now you know this story, right? But this is what they said. But what did they do? You've all seen the headlines, right? And I understand it just, oh yes, I think this is really interesting. This was also, you can find this on the internet. Everybody has to sign this integrity pact form, written by who? By the CEO, Mr. Serta here. So as you know, he went to jail last year. And that, again, is another embarrassing story, I think, and a shameful story for a man who wrote one set of ethical values and then just ignored them, and bribery and corruption was actually his statement. But look, it's not just him and Garuda that was embarrassed by this. Rolls-Royce, Airbus also fined. Again, my message is, it is not worth it. It's better to live. How do you think he feels now with his wife, with his family, with his children? How does he feel as a man, as a leader? I think we all would do better just to do what we say and live ethically and live in our business that way and not allow greed to get the better of us. Basically, be the company you say you are. Why review poorly led cultures? Well, I think I've made my point on that one. Instilling an ethical culture through values and beliefs. Let's look at this a little bit. Okay, I believe we should use surveys, both of leadership and employees, and then interviews from a third party, and then have a really strong cultural definition to which we can follow. I'm going to show you a few quick examples of that. These are some great questions that I think we should ask of leadership. Do you believe your company behaves ethically? How important is it for you to work for an ethical company? Because you have a choice as an employee too. Do you want to work with a company that has strong ethics or not? Are the ethical values of the company followed? This is a real example from a client where we asked them this, and you can see, well, most of the time, 50% of them said that. But 32% said only some of the time does our company follow its own ethical values, right? There's room for improvement here. Leadership can do a better job. Ask the customer what they think, and they will tell you. This is another real example. I love this. I asked the customer of my client, what feeling do you get when you work with this company? They said trust. That is a beautiful thing. When your customers see you representing trust as a value, of course, they're going to keep doing business with you on that basis. And then what about determining ethical cultural definition? I know there's a lot of words on this slide, so I'm going to go to the next one, but I want to show you this tool for discerning and bringing values together. Here's some values. Here's what we mean by those values. Let's look at integrity. I'm going to focus on integrity this morning as a value that can help, maintain a strong ethical culture. Here's integrity. One definition is moral uprightness, right? Who wouldn't want to have integrity in their company and moral uprightness? And then we use words like trust, make a promise and keep it. Truth, even when no one is watching. And then own it, safe to share. Imagine you've got a new employee and you want to say to them, at this company, you can feel safe to share. If you see something that integrity is not being demonstrated, please come and tell us. It's safe to share, right? That's a very freeing and liberating place to work, I believe. That's where I would choose to be, where I can be open and follow these value standards. Here's another company that defines integrity. We think before we act, we do the right thing, and we keep our word. So now one employee can say to another employee, hey, buddy man, at this company, we keep our word. You told me that you were going to do something yesterday. You didn't do it. We keep our word at this company. Also, we do the right thing. Hey, Mr. Salesperson, I heard you telling a lie to a customer. At this company, we do the right thing. It's amazing. You need to give a language to your employees to use. Otherwise, how can they help you maintain your culture? This is the big poster. So I showed you integrity, represented, look, by this idea of a strong tree trunk. Images are very helpful when you want to get across ethical values and have people follow them. Another example here from a company called MVP. Another mind map, you see, values like honesty, safety. Let's take a deeper dive into honesty. They have a lot of Spanish speaking people, so we like to use the Spanish word as well, honesty and honestidad. And look what they say about honesty. We trust each other. Here we go again. We do the right thing. The truth will let us set free. And sometimes it's good to say, this is what we do. Sometimes it's good to say what we don't do. No lying, no withholding information. So again, I think this is beautiful. And I know this helps this company run an ethical environment because they have these values and refer to them. Okay, let's keep going to the next part. How to make ethical values memorable. Well, there's 4 things here I would look for. Have a poster on the wall. If your values are not on the wall, I believe you're not proud of them, you don't really believe them, and you are not willing to stand next to them. So make sure your ethical values are posted on the wall. Have a launch event. Again, CEO, leadership, announce the values. Then train the employees to use them and have an ethical values speech that's videotaped that you show to all new employees and you can show over and over again so that people don't forget. This is an example from a company called Sabre. This is what their values looked like when we started working with them. It's just black words on a white piece of paper. That, I believe, is not enough to make this cultural definition come alive and thrive. This is how we finished up with it. A real poster with a few words that are very easy to remember. What do we mean by empowered at Sabre? We mean we evolve and solve. We solve problems, in other words. So that's an important thing. Here's an example from my company. This, by the way, guys, is how I got started in this business. Is I was very big on doing this in my own companies. And here's one example. You see, we had superheroes to represent our values. They had a nickname. We have the value, and we have descriptive behaviors, and brought in a way that employees can get excited about. You want the employees to be excited about your ethical definitions. And I love this quote from Robert Horn at Stanford, who said that when we intertwine words and visual elements, we augment our communal intelligence. Now, if leading with ethics and values is not a desire to augment communal intelligence, what is? So it's really important that we don't just do words, that we put words with images. Here's another beautiful example from this company, Tavera. Here's their 4 core values. We're going to look at integrity in a moment. I told you integrity is one that we are focusing on this morning. By the way, Stephen Covey, very famous author, he wrote a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. His definition of integrity is simply make a promise and keep it. What if everybody in the company made a promise and kept it? And we help them know what the right promise is, So, so anyway, make them visual. And look, how do we make integrity visual? Well, how about this stoic man standing in the driven rain on this granite cliff, and he's standing, look, on true north, right? This puts images in the people's heads now about what integrity means. It means we stand for something. It's true north. We do not get pushed aside easily on this value. This is how we help them bring it alive. Jut, do you think this is interesting? Is this interesting for our listeners?
I think it is interesting because it is communicative, informative, and then visualize.
Yes.
About the value.
Yes.
Understandable.
Yeah, and I'm glad we have interpreters, but because I'm speaking English, I think it helps to have a lot of visuals. So this is how Tavera defined integrity. We keep our promises, tell the truth, and own up to our mistakes, even when it hurts. Stories. I don't expect you to read this, guys. I'm just making the point about a story, a real story from the company that demonstrated integrity. These stories are very important in illustrating the value. So we always look for a real story from every company to back up the value. And then we got to talk about it every day. Every day is how we got to talk about it. Here's an example from an Indonesian company. They came up with a nice acronym, ICARE. This is called Regenesis, this company. And here are their values. You can see respect and excellence and so on. And every morning, oh, wait a minute, I got to do something. I got to share my screen, share sound, share my keynote. And now you should hear the sound.
Regenesis.
Apa budaya kita?
I care.
I for
Integrity.
C for
Collaboration.
A for
Accountability.
R for
Respect.
E for
Excellent.
Regenesis.
Luar biasa.
Regenesis.
Luar biasa.
Regenesis.
Maju, maju, maju terus.
Grateful.
Yes, so there's an Indonesian company. Every morning, that's how they start, by reciting their values. And so have a speech. You can find speeches, examples on my website at cultureshours.com. So great cultures have great benefits. Now, how do we internalize it? Four things here again. I like four. I like four values in a company. I like four bullets on a slide. For internalizing ethical cultures, we need to have hire and unhire, processes and workflows, a notice and nominate scheme. In America, we say shout out. Hey, shout out, you know, Budiman for doing this. Catch and correct language. Hiring. I've already talked about linking stories with, but link them with interview questions. So here's that story again. Now in the interviews, you use this as a real example of how would you, Mr. Candidate or Mrs. or Miss Candidate for this position, how would you handle this situation? It's a great way to test the values of that person and listen for what values they're talking about as they say how they would do it. And you have one right answer here from your own company. Yes, core workflows, same thing. This is how work flows through the company. We should tie our ethics to this as well. So there's a number of steps to this, which we'll talk about in the workshop, but it's really important to bring your values into your process. So as somebody's doing their work every day, they are following the ethics of the company, right? By the way, I think we're taking questions in the end. We're going to have questions in a few minutes, but you can put the questions in the chat, right?
Right.
Jud? Yeah.
Yes. The audience can put the question on the chat, and then they can use Bahasa or English. It's okay. We have interpreter here.
Great. Perfect. What a great seminar, huh?
Thank you.
Okay, so I mentioned that how important it is to have the values. So you see this company, Tavera, for this stage of the company, their customer journey, integrity is the value. Of course, they all are present, but which one most? When we're selling, we want integrity, right? And then we want to be driven when we're helping them prepare, and then caring in their journey. And finally, collaborative when we work together as a team. So another way to get your values spread through the organization. Here's that company, Sabre again. This is their workflow, how work flows through the company. They have some detail here, but look, they have the values also stated. Empowered, we evolve and solve again, is right here on this. So it's always in front of people, and they're reminded all the time about how to work effectively. Notice a nomination scheme. This is simply where one employee nominates another employee when they catch them committing a core value. It is the most effective way to keep your values alive once you launch them. Please take this away and make sure you are doing this in your organization. And there's a number of ways you can do this. You need a method, but it could be on Slack or a Google form or just an email, but some way to submit to lift up a colleague when they commit a core value. And then those stories should be told at the monthly meeting. And then maybe there's a reward. Doesn't have to be financial. It could be a badge, a star, something they can collect. But very, very important that we have a notice and nominate process. That's when things are going good. If things are not so good and we see a behavior we don't like, then we want to be able to catch and correct that. And these are some ways to do it without basically hurting feelings. But we want to train up employees to be able to use language to do exactly this. When they see something, a behavior not being demonstrated, then they need to be able to empowered to step into that conversation with that employee and correct them. So I'm getting to the last part of the presentation now, and this is around how we value high-performing cultures. And look, I have 4 bullets again. So again, more detail in the workshop next week, but we need to be able to rank and rate employees, measure the organization's ethical culture, and there are ways to measure. I'm going to show you those, and then consider the impact of performance and profit, right? And then, of course, quantitative surveys. So let's look at the first one. I call it the core score. Let's measure how employees demonstrate the behaviors we want from our cultural definition. Do they demonstrate them all the time, most of the time, some of the time, or none of the time? And this is how this works when you do this. Guys, you can all do this. Get a spreadsheet, put your employee names down here on the left, put your values across here, and simply have a score all of the time, most of the time, some of the time. So someone like Budiman or Jut, of course, scoring top scores, 12 out of 12, UNITA. But maybe there's an employee like Mike or one of the recruits, recruit number 1, who's not demonstrating the values. So we use this for existing employees and for potential employees. It's a beautifully simple way. And look, if they're green, we nurture them. These are our top employees. Remember the A player that I showed at the beginning?
Yep.
If they're a low performer, they need to be unhired, right? They don't belong in our organization. They are never going to, if they're a 2 or a 4, they are never going to get up to being a 10, 11, 12. But if they're a 7, an average performer, then I say we train them, okay? We can train those guys and gals to follow these values better so that they can stay with the organization. Also, another way to measure is an Mps score. Look at this. We asked, what score would you give the company for having a great culture? And it might be for having great ethics definition, whatever you like. But the Mps score, 64.7, just 4 months later, in March of 21, same company was scoring almost 90% on an Mps score for having a great culture. That's how quickly you can make improvements using my 9 deeds in 90 days as spelled out in the Culture Fix book. Okay. Here's another great one. Simply ask the employees, how confident are you that your company can sustain its commitment to ethical standards? And by the way, these surveys with employees should always be anonymous, so they feel free to talk. And look at this. How many, only about half the company was scoring 8 and above in the before case. 4 months later, having seen what we're doing to lead ethical standards in the company, almost 100% of the companies scoring above 8. Okay, guys, this is really very, very doable. Just follow the recommendations here. Okay, Jut, I'm getting into my final slides to finish at 9:40, okay?
Okay. Go on.
All right, here we go. So, ethical cultures drive great performance. I already showed this slide at the beginning. Don't need to go over it again. But basically, if you can do this using the images that I've shown, using the surveys, the interviews, the core score, all those things I talked about, use those, and you too can have an organization that has great ethical standards and follows great performance. But if you see somebody that's not conforming, you must take action and hire them. But you'll also get other benefits, like I said, about people stepping into those difficult conversations because they have a language, they have a cultural definition, an ethical definition. So that's kind of my summary, quick summary of the 9 deeds. And again, if you want to come to the workshop, you will get access for 60 days to all of this stuff in the Culture Fix Academy. And I want to show you finally, this model is something that you will see when you come into the Academy. And I want to show you, this is the model for the process for my own company. So I do what I'm preaching. And here is my values. I like to have very unique values, Churchillian, abundancia. These are my values, and this is where they fit in the process for how work flows through my company. And that's it.
Thank you. Thank you, Will.
You're welcome. I hope that wasn't, I hope that was good information and not too fast, but nice and visual too.
Okay, I hope that easy to catch for the audience too. Thank you, Will, for your sharing and remarkable presentation. Next, we already have some question here.
Okay.
Okay, let me see. From Pak Budi Hartono. Okay, the first question is there enough time for you to explain more about internalizing the values?
Yes. So internalizing the values is, of course, meaning they live inside us, right? We are naturally going to do that. This is the most, it's a great question. This is one of the most fundamental things. If we can actually hire using the correct interviewing practice, if we can hire people that already have the values that we want to have in the organization, then they will most likely act naturally in concert with those values without us having to have lots of rules and HR procedures and things like that. We need to have those, but so internalize them. It begins with hiring people that have the values. Then do the things that I shared, talk about them every day, have notice and nominate schemes that lift people up so people can see what a good behavior looks like. Then have catch and correct so that when people do not behave correctly, we are correcting that with a language that we've been trained to use via the cultural definition. And if they do not respond to that coaching, then they need to be unhired. So we keep the organization as pure as we can in terms of living by those values.
Okay. Like commitment and consistency, right? When we want to build the
Yes.
value.
Yes, and Jut, I've noticed that many leaders,
Okay.
they're excited about, you know, the picture and the words, and then they launch it. And then because they are entrepreneurs or they're ideas people, they want to move on to the next shiny thing. And they just let it slide and they stop doing the notice and nominate. They stop talking about the values. And that's when it's all a waste of time. The work begins when you launch and you put your poster on the wall. That's when the work begins to make sure that your culture really is going to look like the one that you put on the wall and not be a Wells Fargo or a Boeing or a Garuda who said one thing and did something else. Yes, it's hard work. You've got to keep doing the work.
Right. Right. Many, what is it? Many challenges in implemented, right? Okay.
Yes. Yes, but you can follow, you know, the Academy and follow the Culture Fix book. It's all simple there. It's all laid out. At the end of every chapter, there's a workbook. So people can, you know, just step by step do this stuff themselves.
Okay, thank you, Will. Okay, we'll go to the next question. So I hope Pak Budi is already satisfied with the answer. And now it's the second one from Pak Rudi Ima Batam. Okay, the question is any correlation between corporate value and personal performance? What do you think?
Yes, yes. Certainly there is. So remember my first 2 or 3 slides, I was saying it is possible to have an employee in your company that has, well, you know, we could go through all the different ones. It can have high ethics, and also high values. And we really want people to be in that top right quadrant, the magic quadrant, right? Where they have high ethics and high values. And then the question is, so now they fit the culture, they fit our organization, they're good people, but are they performing is the next part. So then performing, of course, that's a different, we're not talking about performance today, but ideally you can have high performance too. But yes, again, by hiring and training the right people, you can have personal values that are aligned with the company values. That's really the only way. And if there is a misalignment, which we're going to talk about in the workshop, then either the company has to decide to unhire that person, or in many cases, Jute, that employee will decide, this place doesn't feel right to me. I don't feel that these values are my values. And they'll go to another company where they can find the values that are a match for them.
Okay, thank you, Will. Yes, from your metrics, like the 4 boxes, right?
Yes.
The top on the right, high contribution, high value ethics. It's the what is it? The dreaming employee that we want to have.
That's the
right?
dream employee. That's the
Okay.
dream employee. Yes, exactly. Yes. And so if you have a great employee, but they're not performing well, and when I say great employee, I mean they fit your ethics, they fit your values, they fit your culture, then find a job in the company where they can perform. They're probably they're probably the right person in the company, but just in the wrong job. So help them find another job in the company where they can perform. It's great for them.
Yeah.
It's great for you as an employer too.
Yeah, don't let them misfit in this organization, right?
Yes, misfits either need to be moved into a different job or unhired if they really don't fit. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
I say unhired, by the way. I use the word unhired. I don't like to say fired. I don't like to say fired. Unhired just means, it means, I believe, again, accountability. So if I hire somebody and it doesn't work out, I don't want to say you're fired because, you know, me enforcing on them. I want to say, listen, I too made a mistake. Okay. It's not working out. I thought it was going to work, but it didn't. I accept some responsibility. Therefore, I am unhiring, not firing, you know. And often you can do that simply by saying, hey, James, these are our values, and this is our ethical code in this company. And you go through them and you can show them, you see how we don't feel like you're really fitting these. And sometimes they will say, you know what, you're right. Maybe I should go somewhere else. And you say, yes, please go somewhere else. We will help you.
Yes, right. It's just a word, but it means a lot, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so we have a lot of questions here. We still got time. So there is an anonymous attendee, no name. He asked, in the example that being given from when it's all go wrong cases, where is the problem actually? What do you think when it all go wrong cases? So the problem, the main problem actually, what is it in your opinion?
What kind of cases? All grow?
He just said in the example before, like maybe the Boeing or maybe the.
Oh, so Wells Fargo,
case.
is he saying Wells Fargo, you mean?
Yes.
So yes, please ask the question again.
Okay. Oh, what is it? In the example that being given before, when it all go wrong cases.
Yes.
Where is the problem actually? Maybe the main problem.
Yes. The main problem is actually,
the root cause. Yeah.
The problem is actually very, very simple. The main problem is that people write some words which sound good, but they don't really mean it. They are not being truthful about those words. And then they do not do what those words, that ethical definition says. Probably because they don't have the values, you see. They just looks good, but they don't have the values. And therefore the greed or you know, which is about bribery and corruption and so on. So greed becomes a more powerful value for them than the value of, let's say, protecting customers or protecting the environment, right? If so many companies say, oh, we protect the environment, and then they are just putting chemicals in the ocean because it's good for profits. They think it's good for profits, but that's short term. Eventually, it's bad for profits. Eventually, consumers will not buy from that company and they will be very hurt. So it's really quite simple. Write words that you really believe and then stick to it. It's like the definition of integrity from Stephen Covey. Make a promise and keep it. And when we all do that, we sleep better at night. We feel like better citizens. We can stand in front of our family with pride, you know. But if we cut corners, take bribes, do corruption, all those things, we do not have that great feeling. And before God, you know, we do not have that great feeling. And we do not sleep well at night. But we're, you know, caught up in that. It's so much better to simply have great values and live by them.
Okay. What a wonderful world, right?
What a wonderful world. Yes, what a wonderful world that would be. But you know, it really does exist. There are companies everywhere who are very high performing. I mean, in this country, I talked about some bad examples. There's lots of good examples. In this country, we have Starbucks, McDonald's, actually, Southwest Airlines. These companies are fantastic companies to work for. They live by their values. McDonald's had a scandal where the CEO was having an affair with an employee, and McDonald's does not allow that, right? So even though as a CEO, McDonald's unhired that CEO and confessed everything. They were open. They handled it according to their policy. The board of directors, they did everything right. And McDonald's just skated through that scandal unharmed, even I would say stronger. So that's how it can be. And I know employees love working at McDonald's. It's also a very accepting culture. And so people can feel very comfortable there, you know? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. It's not a mission impossible, right?
That's right.
It's mission possible.
It's not mission impossible, but it takes a lot of work and attention. And of course, of course, sometimes we make mistakes, but you're going to make a lot less if you live by that and you have that kind of a culture. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Will. The next question from Pelabuhan Indonesia, PT Pelabuhan Indonesia Persero, Pak Rahmat Yamin. The question is, what is the best punishment? What is the best punishment that company gives for employee who has the lowest score in purpose for increasing their performance and values?
Yes. Well, it's not about performance, right? In fact, you could have an employee that's very high performing. This happens a lot in sales. There are sales guys that are high performing. They sell a lot of stuff. But when the orders come into the company, now the company can't meet those orders, right? Mm-hmm. Because they don't have capacity, or the product doesn't have those features, you know, or the salesman has somehow oversold. And that makes a lot of hardship for the people who have to deliver what the salesperson sold. So sometimes you can have high performing, but their values, you see, they're lying to the customer. They're not showing good respect for their colleagues who come behind them. So it's actually, you know, just want to make that point. Sometimes you can have high performance, but still have low values and low ethics. So, again, what's the punishment? Well, the punishment, first of all, depending on the offense, okay? The McDonald's CEO, no tolerance. So the punishment is you're unhired, you're fired, and we're not going to pay your bonus. You do not get any bonus, right? He was very clear to him. Well, he knew he was breaking the ethics of the company. So that's that. In some cases, that's it. In other cases, if it's a mild infraction, you maybe give them a warning, and you show them, and you just simply say, "Hey, at this company, you use the word we, and you talk about we. At this company, we respect, you know, men and women equally, let's say.
Yep.
And therefore, if you are not, and we've noticed that you don't respect men and women equally, unless you can conform with our value, then we will have to unhire you. And you just give them a warning. And, you know, so I think it depends on the punishment. But ultimately, you must be ready to unhire.
Yeah, yeah. There is rules, must be, what is it, comply to the rules, and it is fair for everyone. It is, and it is clear for everyone, right? And must commit
Yes.
to the, and stick to the laws and the regulation in the company. Okay, well, thank you for the answer. There's a question here, still from Pak Budi Hartono. In a country where the harmony is an important value,
Yeah.
have you had any experience to live up honesty or integrity?
Yes. So, yeah. So listen, harmony. Actually, there's an Indonesian water company that I worked with called Pelangi. I think they're on one of the islands, maybe not the main island, and one of their values is harmony. So yes, I understand harmony could be a value, but you know that doesn't mean that you don't step into that difficult conversation in a respectful way. Actually, I think you're going to have a higher level of harmony if you can have two adults who respect each other, working together in a safe environment with a good culture, and you're going to have more harmony by being brave enough to have that difficult conversation and say, hey, Mr. Sales Guy, I know you are my friend, and I know we go and have dinner together on Fridays, but it's really important to me and my personal harmony and the harmony of our company that you do not take that bribe. You do not cross the line on our ethical values. So harmony, yes, but that doesn't mean we don't have strong leadership skills and step into that difficult conversation in a respectful way. Don't you agree, Jud?
Yes, I agree with it. Harmony, respectful each other equally.
Yes.
That's not a mission impossible, right?
Yes.
In
Yes.
every organization. Okay, I hope it's clear enough for Pak Budi. I pick one question that I think it is interesting. So gratitude first, thanks to Will Scott. Thank you, Will. You take the example of Wells Fargo and Garuda Indonesia. The question is from Pak Slamet. Okay. These are examples that companies' decisions that are full of ethical dilemmas. But of course, one of the most important to overcome this problem is the legal system and other system in the country, right? Based on his own personal experience, he doubted. Do you have any insight to reduce his disbelief or reluctance?
Yes, so if I understand correctly, he is saying, what if the legal system in the country does not support ethicals, right? And yes, that is a terrible injustice where, let's say, a very wealthy person can commit crimes, right, because they're wealthy, but a poor person cannot commit crimes. The poor person goes to jail and the rich person's, you know, because they're rich. And a true legal system would have equality, right, in that situation and treat both people the same way. I don't know if that's what Budi Hartono is referring to, but
Slamet, pardon me, it's a Pak Slamet question.
Oh, so Salamat. Okay. Well, I don't know if that's what they mean, but I agree. It's hard if the legal system does not support you. But in corporations, actually, and everything I'm talking about, it's not about legal or laws of the country. It's about ethical standards that we set in our company. And when we hire, we're saying, hey, new employee, these are our ethical standards. You must follow these, or we will take and we're at will to enforce them. Of course, some companies also make it, some countries, some laws also make it hard to unhire or take people off the payroll. But yes, I still think that we have many opportunities to control our own world, have our own standards. And I do believe all over the world, entrepreneurs and leaders are setting a new standard that in spite of the government, in spite of the laws of the country, leaders and entrepreneurs can still bring change.
Okay, right. Not only the organization, but what is it? All the country, the system, the people must support this ethical culture, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's the only way we will have a better future, right? It is,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so I'm so sorry, Will and audience, for not answering all the questions. There are so many questions here, but we still can meet next week, right? On online workshop, right?
Yes.
With
Yeah.
Will Scott.
Mhm.
And now, Will and audience, we already at the end of the session. It's
Yep.
10 o'clock here. I try to summarize and give the conclusion of our session. Ethical must be strongly embedded in an organization's values, right? Employee with high ethics and contribute his or her high performance is an image of a dream employee or A+ player, you said. So what we should do next? At first, how to cultivate and then internalize this ethical culture in our beloved organization? Many aspects involved and action to take. Well, it's never too late to start, right?
Right.
And Will, we'd like you to give a closing statement regarding to our topic today.
Thank you. Well, so look, I think we all have a personal choice in this. And if we choose to have great values, great ethics, and to live by them, and as leaders to spread that message amongst our community, and in a company, spread it upstream to our vendors and suppliers, downstream to our customers, then we are not only leading a company, we're leading a culture, and it can be, it really will change the world. So each of us, with our own personal choices, can change the world.
Okay, thank you. Good luck for all today, right? Well, thank you very much for your sharing. And then for the audience, I need to remind you again that we will have 2 days online workshop, July of 14, titled Cultivating an Ethical Culture in the Organization, guided by PEBOSS team from PPM Manajemen, and July of 15, Internalizing Ethical Culture in the Organization, guided by Will Scott himself, right? You'll be here again next week. Okay, and then for further information, you can click on bit.ly/ppm registrasi seminar, or you can contact to our administrator here. You can start register now since it has limited seats. Okay, thank you so much for sharing with us, Will.
Thank you.
Stay healthy and stay safe. I want to say a massive thank you to all the enthusiastic audience here who joined this session.
Yes.
Have an amazing day for you all and see you on the next one.
Thank you. Hope to see some of you next week.
Right. Okay, Pak David, are you still here?
Yes, I'm still here and I'm enjoying every minute of your session. It's a very interesting one, but it's too bad. I'm taking lots of notes, but don't worry, guys. Too bad it's so short, but don't worry. Like Chut said, that we're going to see each other again, especially you, Will, on 14 and 15, and we're going to learn a lot about how to implement the business ethics in your everyday organization's life.
That's right.
And before we move on to the next session, we're going to take a moment to have this photo group session. So I want you to be in your best position and please give us your greatest smile to our audience. Okay, are you guys ready? Here we go. On my count, in 3, 2, 1. Once again, in 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you very much, Will, and good. I'll see you again on 14 and 15 of July with the workshop.